Hi, T4 friends. It is Dr. Alanna Bree, and I am so excited to be here with you. We've had a little bit of a break because of the holiday, but we are back, and I will tell you, I just got back from the Society of Pediatric Dermatology meeting with all my wonderful colleagues, and we are going to have some good talks here coming up in the future. We got lots of people signed up to give some really great talks, so I'm looking forward to that with y'all. And then as far as today, we're going to be talking about career choices in dermatology. And I basically just based this on my career path. There are other options out there. But I will share from my perspective, and these are my views and my opinions, which may not be true for you or anyone else. And then I'd be happy to take questions, or you can always email afterwards if you have questions about a specific thing we talk about tonight. So I have to say, pediatric dermatology, I think I was made to be a pediatric dermatologist. I didn't know it. I came out of medical school. Here I am at the bottom corner with my husband and our two kids. My son had my hat over his head, which you can't really see, but he's the jokester, and my daughter's very serious and still continues to be. They are now 28 and 26. And yes, my husband and I were med school sweethearts, got married, had our two kids. And then I went on the academic track, kind of at the beginning part of my career. I think I got to midlife and kind of had a midlife awakening, in my opinion. Won't call it a crisis, because I think, I used what I had learned at the beginning part of my career and applied that in ways that really just gave me a lot of joy in what I did. So that midlife kind of awakening, and I then went into private practice, and I really focused on what was important to me and lived out my passion. And this picture here is Holly, and Holly is a medical student. She is a future pediatric dermatologist. She was actually my roommate at the Society of Pediatric Dermatology meeting, and I am her mentor. We're working on a research project together now. But the really special thing is Holly was one of my patients. I first met her when she was 7. She's been a camper at Camp Discovery, a camp counselor, and she's been a derm ambassador for the nonprofit. So just kind of feels full circle. And I know at this stage in my career, I feel like I really just want to have more of a ripple effect with teaching and mentoring, which is why I do this position, the Director of Pediatric Dermatology at SAGES, because of the great educational platform that they have, and they've given me the opportunity to share T4 with you. And then also the nonprofit work that I do. I really want that to go on long past when I retire. So this is just one of my favorite quotes. I love L.R. Nosh. She is amazing, but life is amazing, and then it's awful, and then it's amazing again. And in between the amazing and awful, it's ordinary, mundane, and routine. Breathe in the amazing, hold on through the awful, and relax and exhale during the ordinary. That's just living heartbreaking, soul healing, amazing, awful, ordinary life. And it's breathtakingly beautiful. And I think as medical professionals, physicians, that we are always, saying it will get better when it'll get better once I get into medical school. It'll get better when I finish medical school. It'll get better when I get into residency. It'll get better when I finish residency, when I finish my fellowship, when I get established in practice, when I retire from practice. And I think it's really an important thing that we try and enjoy the ordinary. There's mostly ordinary. And I think if we can enjoy the ordinary, celebrate these extraordinaries, and really help each other and lift each other up in the awful parts, then I think that will give us, a lot of satisfaction in our careers, help prevent burnout, and really just help our patients in the end. So again, love this quote because it's so, so true. And then this also is very true in my opinion as well. The highest reward for a person's work is not what they get for it, but what they become because of it. And I will have to say that really the satisfaction of my career has come from my colleagues, the opportunities I've had, but really my patients. And that really is the highest reward for doing the work that we do, in my opinion. So life is a make your own adventure book. And the great thing is you are the author. You are writing your own unique story. So please don't compare your story to others. And I think this is really important because as we go through medical training, we are always getting compared to one another. And I have to say that it's hard not to fall into that trap of comparison. And you know, I'm sure you've heard that comparison is the thief of joy. And it is so, so true. Because there's always going to be somebody better, smarter, faster, more talented, more famous, whatever. But there's also going to be the people that aren't. And again, I think it is focusing on what makes your life an adventure, what you're good at, what your gifts, skills, and talents are, and then find a way to maximize those. So again, please try not to compare yourself. And I think it gets easier as you get older, because you start to care less and less about what other people think of you. And I wish that's something that I would have done a lot sooner, in my lifetime. So I think this is also what should kind of direct your path. Know your why and then pursue it. It provides you focus when you live on mission. So what is the mission statement for your life? I know what the mission statement is for the nonprofit that I run, but what is the mission statement for your life? Think about that. And then if you have a mission, it's easier to kind of lay out your goals for that, because we become very focused on what is the next step. And in medical training, it's very clearly defined. You go to undergrad, you go to medical school, you go to residency, you maybe go to fellowship. And then when you get out, you realize that the world is this amazing open book. And it's the first time that you really get to decide what you want to do, where you're not being directed to do it. And that can be really awesome, and it can be really overwhelming. And again, congratulations to all the residents who recently graduated and are out there in the big wide world right now. And then congratulations to all the incoming dermatology residents. I'm excited that you're here too. And I hope that we can shape and grow you over the next few years. And I know Dr. Davis and I both love what we do through teaching, and we are here to help and guide you kind of along the way, if you need that. So if you guys ever have questions, know that the both of us are available for you. Again, getting back to your mission statement, your life mission statement, it allows you to say no to things that could derail you. And I will tell you that that is also something that we're very much trained to do, is say yes, yes, yes to everything. When you're a medical student, somebody asks you to do something, and you do it, and you ask, how do you want me to do it? And then you follow that directive. And we get so used to being people pleasers, because I think that's the nature of the people that go into a caregiving profession. And we don't want to disappoint people. So we say yes to a lot of things. And again, yeses are important, and I would encourage you to say yes to things that, really help give you career satisfaction. But a yes here is a no somewhere else. And that no may be to your family. It may be a career or hobby, something that you have outside your career, a hobby or another passion that you live. So again, just remember to make your yeses be yeses that bring you satisfaction, and don't feel bad about your no's. Whoever asks will move on, and they will eventually find somebody to say yes. And I did actually have to meet with a woman in HR when I was at Texas Children's Hospital, because I was a little bit slow in clinic, maybe a lot slow in clinic, because I like spending time with patients. And she gave me a nice phrase. Basically, she nicely said, I have a loose association with time. And that's sometimes why with these T4 talks, I run over a little bit. Because instead of saying I run late constantly, I just have a loose association with time. And I will tell you, the place that serves you well is if you do mission work. People in other countries are much more focused on relationships and not so much on time. So when I go on a mission trip, I feel like I've arrived at home. So anyway, but that woman also taught me that I was a chronic yes sayer, and then I couldn't keep up with everything I said yes to. And then it really became, I resented all the yeses. So she told me when somebody asked me to do something, she said, your family and your children are important, because we talked about what was important. She said, touch your wedding ring to remind you, physically, touch that. And then just say, thank you so much for thinking of me for this opportunity. I'm glad that you asked. If you can please give me 24, 48 hours to think about this opportunity and how it might fit in my schedule and how I can best accomplish the goals that you're looking for, then I'll get back to you with my answer. And again, it really helped me from doing that chronic automatic yes when somebody asks me. And sometimes we say yes because, it makes us feel good that they ask. It makes us feel like they think we're smart if they ask us to write something or to lecture on something. We know that it can help our career or in academics. Also, if you have your life mission statement, you really don't need to explain or compete. Again, competing, comparing, it's never good. Unless you're an NFL football star or whatever, then you need to compete. But otherwise, I guess the NBA and all of those things, women. Anyway, I'm getting derailed. My dog made me flustered. So no need for explanations. So basically, I feel like if you know why you are doing something, you really don't feel the need for explanations. You don't need to say why you're doing something. Know your why and stick to it. Stick to your guns. Honor your unique values. I think knowing your why lets you, again, prioritize what you value. And it really, the main thing is it gives your life purpose. And again, living on purpose is so, so good, because when you know your why, you know your purpose, it really does give you a lot of satisfaction and happiness, and it prevents burnout. And also remember that this may change and shift over time in different seasons of your life. And that doesn't mean you're a failure. It just means you're being wise with your time and your energy and your gifts and skills. So again, know your why and pursue it. And I think success can look very different for what we think it's going to look like. We think we're going to be on this trajectory that goes straight up, but then success really over time gets to be a little bit of a jumbled mess. But I think it really is important that if you can smell the roses along the journey, that you're gonna not always be looking to get to that next step, that next goal. And it, again, will bring you a lot more satisfaction. So give up the straight line. The straight line's not fun anyway. The detours are really where you have the most fun, in my opinion, and really end up having the most satisfaction. This is Peso, everyone. Peso is our new puppy. He's 5 months old. He is an Aussie Doodle, a mini Aussie Doodle, and he is not being a good little brother to his big sister. So he's going to be with me here. So my training in dermatology, thank goodness my medical school, SIU School of Medicine, and this is where Dr. Pimple Popper is from as well. Thank goodness we had a required rotation in dermatology. Because I had no idea that I was interested in dermatology. So I did get married to my high school sweetheart, and we actually had 2 children in medical school, which is kind of crazy. But they've actually shown in a study that the sooner in your career that you have children, the happier you are. And I think that's true, because now my children are grown and flown. And we are, my husband and I, after almost 29 years of marriage, are enjoying the empty nest life. And again, you'll have different seasons like that too. But again, you can make everything work. And I've had one of my colleagues say that, I agree. Work-life balance is not a real thing. It's never going to balance. Some days you're going to be great at home. Some days you're going to be great at work. Some days you're going to be great at both. Some days you're going to stink at both. This balance thing is not what it's all about. It's really more like a pizza or a pie that has wedges, and, there's only so many wedges that can go around. So again, that's a better way, I think, to look at things, that each little piece has a wedge. And you can achieve it all. You can make it all fit into the pizza box or the pie pan. It's just you need to be thoughtful about that. But again, I didn't even know that dermatology was competitive. Dr. Bisher, who I love, Lucinda Bisher at SIU School of Medicine Dermatology. I went into her office. We were, again, doing that 2-week rotation. I had the baby Fitzpatrick, and I seriously could not put it down every night when I went home. And I had planned on doing pediatrics. I had to couples match. And when I went in to tell her that I was very interested in pediatric derm, and applying to dermatology, she just really kind of had to shake her head at me, because she was like, you don't even know that this is competitive, do you? And at the time I didn't. And I think that was probably a real gift to me, because I didn't really study for my steps like I probably should, because I had 2 infants at home. And I hadn't done any dermatology research. And I didn't even have any rotation set up in my 4th-year schedule. So I had to scramble. And luckily I was able to rotate with Dr. Elaine Siegfried, who was also one of my great mentors, and is still a dear friend. And I rotated with her, really fell in love with pediatric dermatology. That was my end goal. And so I applied to residency, couples match. My husband got into Washington University, where I did get a pity interview because they wanted they really wanted my husband, basically. So they gave me an interview, and I love all the people there. Don't get me wrong. I loved their chairman at the time. And I really loved their pediatric dermatologist, Susie Bayless. We wrote a textbook together, actually, years later. So again, nothing against them. And I don't even remember who I interviewed with, but during my interview, they told me I wasn't going to get in because it would be too much of an uphill climb for me there. So don't be discouraged if you are a medical student and you're going through the match process, because it's hard. And I always say things work out the way that they're supposed to. And I truly, truly believe that. They also tell you that you have to apply to all these programs and that you have to, get so many interviews to match. And I do think there's, some value in that. But I will tell you that I only got 3 interviews. And again, I matched at my number 1 choice, St. Louis University. I eventually was a chief resident there. And again, balancing family and work, the work-life balance, again, which isn't really a balance. This is just a little interesting story I wanted to make sure I shared. But we had an au pair. She was from Russia, and she ended up having some affiliation, her boyfriend, with some not so good things. And she left in the middle of the night, one night, and we had the FBI involved, Homeland Security, the CIA. And that was just a really interesting thing. And of course, my husband and I had to discuss whose job was more important, his job as a first-year cardiology fellow or my job as chief resident. And this happened in July. Luckily, we were able to get a new au pair. She was from Poland, and we had really great success with her. She was our replacement. And then we ended up with someone from Germany and someone from Sweden, and we still keep in touch with all of those au pairs. So anyway, But I did actually, in my practice, I kind of forgot about this now. In my practice, the St. Louis Police Department, we had filed a missing person report on that young woman. And they reached out to me when I was in the group practice, and I was like, oh my gosh, the missing persons division. And I guess they had found her on Facebook so that they could close the case. But anyway, that's all aside. But life is interesting. Again, it's these curves and winds and bends that makes life more interesting, really. And then I luckily was able to train at Northwestern University. I was a fellow in pediatric dermatology. And interestingly, when I finished with my training in 2004, pediatric dermatology was not yet a fully board certified specialty. The fellowship program hadn't been as formalized as it is today. And you were able to kind of reach out and make these fellowships, the faculty, without a specific match. But now that is all changed, thank goodness. And we grew from a society of pediatric dermatology that used to function out of the kitchen of one of the pediatric dermatologists, their staff. And now we are managed by a great organization. And was one of the biggest meetings we've ever had. It was the biggest meeting, 700 people, and we've just grown so much as a specialty. And I'm so proud of my colleagues in pediatric dermatology. There's less than 500 of us in the country, and there is a real shortage. Anybody's thinking about doing a fellowship in pediatric dermatology, I would highly, highly encourage you to do so. I think it really is the best specialty. Our meeting, most everybody knows everybody, and it's a great opportunity to get involved in research. PEDRA has developed since my time in the Society of Pediatric Dermatology, which is the research arm of it, and there's so many great studies that have come out of that, and will continue to do so. So it is a growing specialty, and we need more help. We need you. And I think it really is a very unique and special community of physicians who really support and care about each other more so than some other fields that I've seen. So again, I feel very lucky to be amongst that special group of people. Now, as far as my fellowship, I did have to fly back and forth. So I was a junior faculty member at St. Louis University. So on Monday and Tuesday, I was chief of pediatric dermatology at the Children's Hospital. And then I would get on a plane and fly up to Northwestern on the first flight out, the 5:25 a.m. flight out of St. Louis into the airport, grab the the metro and head out to train. I got to work with Amy Paller and Annette Wagner there, who I very highly respect. Most people know that Amy Paller is just a brilliant pediatric dermatologist, and Annette Wagner is a brilliant pediatric dermatology surgeon. And again, feel so lucky to have trained with them. But it was busy because I'd fly in on Wednesday and take the last flight out on Friday. And that was a very busy year, but I also learned so much. So don't be afraid to think outside the box. And really, your training is all about your mentors. So find one or two good mentors who will stick with you, and that really makes all the difference. Okay, so jobs I've had along in my journey, and these are kind of the top four that I would say kind of broad areas. So I was the director of pediatric dermatology at St. Louis U. As you guys know, I was also / a fellow at Northwestern that first year. And then I was an assistant professor at Baylor Texas Children's. I was an employee of a small private practice, dermatology practice. And then I was owner and of my own solo practice with a direct patient care model. So those were kind of the four different hats I have worn over my career in clinical practice. And they all have their pros and their cons. So let's jump in to things that I have achieved as well. through those positions. So I was a professor, assistant professor, associate professor, internationally recognized researcher. I got an NIH grant. I was principal investigator on many trials. A World Health Organization chairman. I got to write in the pediatric dermatology codes for the International Classification of Disease. So the ICD iteration that will come out next has many pediatric dermatology codes, and I got to help add those. I was director of the Camp Discovery Committee for the AAD and got involved in that way. Consultant for different companies, an invited lecturer, and an author of many manuscripts, papers, and again, my own textbook with Susie Bayless. So again, things that you can achieve on your journey, I think, get defined by where you work, who you work with, and what is important to you. So these pros and cons. The Director of Pediatric Dermatology. So this was both a pro and a con. I was able to define the vision. So my mentor had gone into private practice. So when I came on, I was the only pediatric dermatologist at my institution. And again, that was really great because I got to define the vision. But then there's a lot of responsibility to defining the vision, but it is something that really can be quite exciting to think about. I was able to set up clinics in the children's hospital and also the outpatient clinics in the dermatology area and also the pediatrics area. But when you have multiple clinical sites, it can be difficult to manage the staff and manage phone calls and those things. Now it's more streamlined with electronic medical records. This was back in the day when we still had paper records. So I think it's a little bit easier to manage multiple clinical sites in those roles. As a leader, I was able to collaborate with other specialties, and that was really nice within the children's hospital. We had a conference, and I was able to bring in speakers from our children's hospital and different subspecialties, neurology, ENT, when we had a conference for the ectodermal dysplasia community. I was able to do some great collaborative research there. And then a big one for me, again, the ability to teach medical students and residents. I was working with them every day, and really teaching is what gives us a ripple effect with our life. I feel like if I can teach people how to take care of pediatric patients well, that then they're going to go out and do the same and teach that. So again, you really can impact multiple generations in the specialty. And then again, all those opportunities, a lot of these opportunities came out of that position. I was invited to lectures. I was able to publish. I received grants. I was able to do research. So again, I think many pros, and a lot of the pros come from just your position and your title in a lot of ways. The cons, again, those multiple clinical sites like we talked about, which I think is less of an issue in this day and age. I did have to answer to two chairmen, both dermatology and pediatrics, and they didn't always have the same goals in mind for their divisions. So there was a lot of managing expectations on both sides. I was very busy. I had administrative responsibilities. And one of those responsibilities was setting up the OR. We didn't have, pediatric dermatology had not really been a thing at our children's hospital. And I was at Cardinal Glennon Children's Hospital, so I got to work with the OR staff to set up, the trays that were important and what instruments I wanted. I didn't need these big, huge trays that they got out and had to clean afterwards. So we were able to streamline that process. I got very lucky. There was a gentleman with a lot of gray hair in the senior part of his career that was a plastic surgeon. And he wanted to mentor someone, and I was in the OR by myself. And so I loved having him take me under his wing. So he would refer a lot of cases to me, and he really grew my confidence, and we operated on the same day. So that's great. But the hospital consults, again, being in charge of those, and then the administrative responsibilities of setting that up, again, kind of falls into both columns. And I just have to say a special thank you to George Haruza. Got him to donate a laser out of his clinic to the hospital way back when, so that I could start a laser clinic. So again, a shout out to him. He may not even remember, it was way back in 2005. But yeah, pretty cool to look back over a career and see who's helped support you, and to remember to thank them and have gratitude for that. And again, one of my favorite sayings is, you don't know what you don't know. Our referring physicians don't know what they don't know. We don't know what we don't know. Our patients don't know what they don't know. And that lack of experience, I think I could have set things up if I had, had more experience. But I think sometimes lack of experience lets you think outside the box more. Things aren't already set up and done. So in some ways, I guess that lack of experience can go into both columns as well. Assistant professor. So again, I was an assistant professor at a large academic institution, a large children's hospital. So this is important to think of too. I think Peso wants to be with me on screen again here. All right, Peso's back and he has his bone. All right, so sorry about that. So basically the opportunity for collegial relationships was high, but sometimes other specialties, it's hard to interact because you have a big department of your own. So again, nothing wrong with a big hospital. And I think you can be a big fish in a small pond, kind of like I was at my first position. But I felt like a very, very, very small fish in a really, really, really big pond. But again, that gave lots of opportunities. And I did have some really great collegial relationships. I had a shared patient with a pediatric surgeon. And we had a patient with EB who lived for quite a long time, had many squamous cell carcinomas develop. And the surgeon would always have me up at, in the OR with him. I was able to, to have relationships with the anesthesiologist that became comfortable with the anesthetic requirements for patients with EB, epidermolysis bullosa. So again, lots of great opportunities to interact with other specialties. Certainly in a busy academic children's hospital, you're going to see a lot of hem-onc patients, and made some great friends in those divisions as well. Just again, lots of opportunities there. So I think that's definitely a pro for being at a large academic institution. I also think it's a really great opportunity to mentor, and again, you're going to have a lot of learners come through your life and in one of these positions. And it's really nice to know that you are making a difference in their life and helping them develop their talents and their skills. And I'm still very thankful to all of the fellows we had at Texas Children's. John Browning was our first fellow, Nena Gim, who has been a lecturer on this with me, Mandy Moran, who is up in private practice up in Wisconsin. So again, really great opportunities for mentorship, which is a lifetime relationship. Again, the ability to do research. I had gotten an NIH conference grant, and I was able to do research on AEC syndrome and really kind of became the world expert on AEC syndrome because it's a rare specialty. I also got the opportunity to teach again with these interesting cases and interesting patients. And again, lots and lots and lots of pros. The cons are that it's overwhelming. A big, big, big pond can be quite overwhelming. Politics of a large institution, and that's from the top down. And again, we know those exist. There's politics in other areas, but I think there's just a bigger proportion in a large academic institution, and it's could also be in the pro column. It could be an opportunity for you to get involved in policy within your institution. For me, it was just draining. So again, could be a pro if that's something that you're good at. I think there's a lot of pressure to perform. I think we all feel this in whatever area we go into. But I just felt there was just a lot to balance between the clinical responsibilities and the academic responsibilities. And then again, unrealistic expectations of the administration. I feel like sometimes at a large institution, they're a little bit more out of touch at the higher levels with the clinical staff. And so that can be a challenge. And then certainly the inability to hire or fire your staff. So you get what you get, and you don't throw a fit, which is what I used to tell my kids when I served them dinner. But I think this fits well here for this portion as well. So, oh no. So dermatology group practice employee. So that's what I did next. I did this for a very short period. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. I got burned out in the academic institution. And again, I was probably just a square peg in a round hole, and it doesn't make the square peg bad and it doesn't make the round hole bad. It just made it not a good fit for me at that stage in my career. So I did, after this, in between these two, I did do some mission work. I took kind of a 2-year sabbatical to do mission work in other countries, which was really great and reminded me of why I went into medicine. And I think, taking those breaks that you need, some people, even just taking a month off if you need to, and negotiating that and taking a sabbatical to kind of reorient yourself is not a bad idea. I think, the evolution of gap years is great. I feel sad that so many people feel like they have to take a gap year to get into dermatology nowadays. But it also helps you focus on your career objectives. And I think doing that later, maybe having a gap year in the middle of your career is not so bad. I'll tell you, I enjoyed mine. So again, wasn't quite sure when I came back what I wanted to do. So it was a small group dermatology practice. There were only 3 of us. And again, this is a pro and a con. So pro being an employee and a con is being an employee. So, when you're an employee, you don't have to worry so much about the business aspects, which is definitely a pro if you don't like the business aspects. But you don't get to have so much say. When you're an employee, again, you come, you do your hours, you see your patients, and then you can go home, which again can be a pro, but then you don't have as much say in what happens in the office. And the nice thing about group practices is patient care is your focus, especially if you have a niche. I think it's really great if you can go into practice with other dermatologists that have similar values to you, or if you have a special interest that complements each other. And then also, I know one of my pediatric dermatology colleagues has an all women based practice. And they kind of share with their, roles in different seasons in their life, which is great. So again, I think it just gives you some more flexibility, and patient care can be your focus, which is really nice. Cons, so definitely in a group practice, there are financial metrics that you need to meet. And if you're not able to meet those, it can definitely be a stressor. I think medical records falls in the cons, no matter what type of specialty that you do, and no matter what type of practice model you go into, but you're more responsible for your own medical records. You don't have people helping you quite as much. But again, with the advent of ChatGPT and some of these things and the different apps that can record that, I think this is going to become less and less of an issue. Prior authorizations, also you have usually less staff to handle those. So a lot of times you have to be more involved in the prior authorization, aspect of things, but it also helps define your your care in the clinic. What medicines are going to be covered, what aren't, and so it helps focus your practice a little bit too. So that is what I thought the pros and cons of a dermatology group practice were. Private practice owner and solo physician. So this, I think, was my most fun part of my career. I don't know if it's because I knew what was important to me and what wasn't. But I felt like there were a lot of pros with this. And again, the pro and con column has the same one at top. You are the boss. So you are the boss. You get to make the decisions. You get to decide what you want to do. And also you are the boss, and we know that things roll uphill, and the buck stops with you, and that can be good and that can be bad. I was able to define the business model, so you can define if you're going to take insurance, if you're not, if you're going to take, the state aid programs, if you're going to do a direct patient care, a concierge model. So direct patient care, basically, it's not a true concierge model because you are providing care for the patients, and you pay them, or you are paid on your, what you do. So I think it's very good. It gives a lot of transparency, in your practice, because I had my price list online. When patients called in, they knew that they were going to have to pay. And it was one of the first things that we talked about. But I also got to spend 30 minutes with every patient, and focus on what I believe was important, which was patient care. So I was able to set up my model where I saw 12 to 15 patients a day. I had spots reserved in case I had a pediatrician reach out to me. So I was able to get patients in the same day. And again, I really thought this was a huge pro, because you do get to define what is important to you. And again, circling back to the direct patient care model, if it is something that you can do, it does grow your practice a lot more slowly. You have to be willing, to, kind of wait, because you can get into some real regulatory issues if you try to have part of your practice be insurance based and part be, kind of a concierge model. There are some rules with charging patients, the same amount. And if you do a sliding scale, there's some issues with verifying pay, and income for your patients, which, can get really tricky. So again, you want to know what you're getting yourself into, when you choose these things. But direct patient care just seemed to make a lot of sense to me, because basically you have your price list, it's available, people know what they're getting themselves into, they don't have surprise billing when they walk out of the office. They are done, they're square, they're at zero. You can give them a super bill that they can file with their insurance. As we know, a lot of people have high deductible plans nowadays, and they put a lot of money on their HSA or FSA card, so they're happy to use those dollars on your care. And I think it really does, people that come to you, know the benefits, of this model, and they appreciate the benefits that are offered. And then the cons. So there are a lot of cons. So the regulatory burdens, are very difficult, with this, because you have to write up your HIPAA policy. You have to deal with the OSHA issues. You have to, have all of your, chemicals documented, all of your business assets documented. So there are a lot of regulatory burdens. Staff management, again, you get to hire and fire your staff, which, you can define what is important to you. You can train your staff well. They know what they are expected to do. But that can be very difficult. You are the one responsible for trying to fill the gaps if somebody calls in sick. You are the one that has to check people in and out if all your staff happens to call in on the Monday after a holiday. So that can, again, be good and bad. The need for marketing. I feel like if you are in your own practice, you do need to market a bit more. Word of mouth, does happen over time, and that is the best way to grow your practice, because you know that if you have happy people, that they're going to refer their family and friends, and they're going to be happy too. But at the beginning, you will need to market more. You will probably have to have more of a social media presence, which can be a pro or a con depending on how you look at it. And then patient reviews. So if you are running the best practice in the world, you will still get patient reviews that are not favorable. And really, these patient reviews, they can kind of hold you hostage to it. And there have been some, horrible stories that have circulated. But I think for the most part, if you focus on taking good care of patients, good things will come. There's always going to be the outliers, and you can't let that define things. And again, responding to those reviews online in a very general sense, not incriminating anything with HIPAA information, because that can get you into a lot of trouble. And for the most part, I think patient reviews can be good. And that's how a lot of patients did find me. But again, if you have a bunch of bad ones out there, it really could hurt you. So again, those are the pros and cons of the practice models I've seen. And I just wanted to kind of cover a few places I've been and people I've met along my journey that have really made my career just so satisfying. And I hope that you can have those experiences along your journey too. So through camp, I met so many great, great people, and many friends who are very dear colleagues, residents, students who have gone on to become dermatology residents. And again, mostly the kids that came as campers, and just being a part of their life has been such a joy. And then mission trips. So again, for a couple of years, I took some time off and did mission trips in other countries with some of my colleagues. And again, that just really was a breath of fresh air in so many ways. This was Nicaragua, and it was amazing. And we really got to do some hands-on medicine with this group. This was Guatemala. I was actually there with my church. And this woman came up to me and, to God be the glory, in my opinion, this woman came up to me. I wasn't there on a dermatology trip, but she started speaking in Spanish really fast and I needed to grab my interpreter. But she told me all about her rash. And this grandma was, in her 80s and doing all the laundry for the family. That was kind of her job for the family. And she was using this very fragrant soap, and they had a washboard, and she had an allergic contact dermatitis with it. And we were able to go into town and go to the pharmacy and get her some medicine. And she really had significant improvement. So that was kind of fun. This was Kenya. It was probably my most favorite mission trip. It was through a grant through Passion to Heal, and still keep in touch with many of these people, mostly just on Facebook or Instagram. But this was a great experience. And I think going overseas helps you see that no matter where people are in the world, they care about their skin, and their skin has a huge social, emotional, societal overlap, and is something that no matter where we practice in the world, skin is important to our patients. And then this is a trip to Tanzania. I'll pronounce there by Tanzania. They have a high risk of getting albinism because of the founder effect. And I was able to go to multiple orphanages over the years, and really help this population that really struggles in this country with some great colleagues. And as you guys know, I then gave up clinical practice to focus on the nonprofit I founded. And that really came from all the experiences I had at Camp Discovery, through the Academy of Dermatology, and on the mission field. And just really where my passions lie is the social, emotional, and spiritual support. So running a nonprofit is also another thing you can do as a physician. So just quickly, before we wrap up, what I've learned along my journey, I guess I should say, don't have dogs when you're trying to give a talk for T4. But other things I've learned: embrace your faith. This is really the source of my strength. And I think it allows us to focus outside of ourselves. I think it's also important to accept yourself as you are, but don't stagnate either. Live the life you were uniquely created to live. Again, don't compare, and really learn to love the skin you're in. Remember that people really are more similar than they are different. We all need love and desire acceptance. And I think grace and humility will open a lot of doors. And again, if you're a square peg in a round hole, then go find a place to be a square peg and make it okay. Make a square hole somewhere. And if you are able to be a round peg in a round hole and that works for you, then great. And if you want to focus on cosmetics, then focus on cosmetics. If you want to focus on derm path, focus on derm path. If you want to focus on multiple things, do that. There are people out there that are doing PD derm and cosmetic derm. Okay, there's one, Dr. Lal. And then there's just, another doc practicing PD derm and derm path. So again, you get to write your own adventure book. Connect with others. Again, collaboration is really powerful. It's a source of synergy. It helps you learn. It helps you grow. I think it's important to talk less and listen more. I will tell you that World Health Organization committee, I got to meet and collaborate with dermatologists from around the world. And really, it was great to just listen to how they looked at skin disease. And then really giving of yourself, you really get so much more back from that. It brings a lot of contentment and a lot of joy. And then find a way to live your passion. Be creative, think outside the box, have courage, take risks, and be willing to fail and learn from your mistakes, because people who avoid failure also avoid success. And don't be dismayed by the brokenness of the world. All things break and all things can be mended, not with time, as they say, but with intention. So go love intentionally, extravagantly, unconditionally. The broken world waits in darkness for the light that is you. And I know there are some people that are going to be taking their board exam coming up. Starting, I believe this weekend is when that opens, over the next 4 weeks. So good luck to all of you out there who are studying and taking boards. Just remember, you are made a masterpiece and you have all the knowledge and skills that you need through your training. So good luck. And again, congratulations to all the graduating residents and welcome to all the new residents. And again, I can't wait to kick off August with all of our great new speakers. So definitely stay tuned. So again, this is such a joy for me to be able to teach and mentor through these T4 talks. So again, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching it later if you're doing asynchronous learning. And please be in touch if you have any questions about career choices. And I'm always happy to share my perspective with you at any time. So again, take care, good night, and we will see you with the next one.